We'll need to give them a few seconds for that to load.
We only have one attendee and 14.
Takes a little bit for that.
There we go. Anyone else out there?
Not that I can see. Rod, can you look at the attendee list and see if any of them need to come into the, or who are members of the LEDIC? I don't see any that I recognize.
Participants. Is Betty Brixen in?
Yep.
Okay.
I don't see Benny. Oh, no, no, I don't see Benny.
I'm here. I see myself.
Oh,
I see you.
oh, I thought you said Benny.
See, Bonnie Lander, Ernest Blackwell.
Yes.
Trish Jordan. All right, so we think we're ready to start?
Yes.
All right. Well, I want to first thank you all for joining us today. This is a pivotal time in this country and in this county, I hope. And I and other members of the board have long supported our county's equity, diversity, and inclusion efforts. That includes supporting this council and leaders for equity, diversity, and inclusion. The council strives to, in part, examine county processes to recommend and facilitate changes that foster equity in services and greater inclusiveness. I can't remember a time when this has been more important. The Board of County Commissioners needs your help. The recent national and local protests that have occurred in the wake of the horrific murder of George Floyd and other Black Americans are shining a needed spotlight on equity and systemic discrimination. The board cares deeply about this issue, and a resolution addressing the matter is scheduled to be taken up this Thursday's business meeting. But we all need to hear more from those who witness and experience racism and unfairness every day, and who know more about these issues than we do, which brings us to today. I want to stress that the point of today's session is just for us to listen. The board needs to hear your opinions and your experience and thoughts on how we can make Clackamas County fairer and more inclusive place for all of us. And I'm not just talking about in the buildings, I'm talking about Clackamas County as a whole. And with that, I think it's a good idea to start with a round of introductions. And we'll start with you, Drenda.
Okay, thank you. Hello, I'm Drenda Howitt, the Commission Staff Manager.
I'm Jim Bernard. I'm the chair of the commission. I guess I'll call on names, Gary.
Yes, I'm Gary Schmidt, County Administrator.
Ken,
Ken Humberston, County Commissioner.
Martha,
Martha Schrader, Clackamas County Commissioner.
Rod,
Rod Cook, Deputy Director, Health, Housing, Human Services.
Kimberly,
Hi, I'm Kimberly Abels, resident of Estacada, here with LEDIC.
thank you, Paul,
Paul Savas, County Commissioner.
Sonia,
Sonia Fisher, Clackamas County Commission.
Ernest,
Ernest Blackwell, although I usually go by Tori, and I'm on the LEDIC.
thank you. Betty,
Betty Brixen, I'm a member of LEDIC and a 20-year resident of Clackamas County.
Tracy,
Hi, Tracy Moreland. I'm a policy advisor for the board and I'm taking notes today.
Thank you. Are you also not a Native American?
Yes, member of the Grand Ronde tribe. Thank you.
Thank you. Joselito? Is that how you say that?
Joselito.
Joselito.
Yes, LEDIC chair.
Thanks. Trish? Your mic.
Hi, I'm the Director of Red Lodge Transition Services. We have a transition center here outside of Oregon City, and I am a member of the LEDIC, and I am Native American.
Thank you. And I'm just going to destroy this name, Kashia.
Yeah, no, you did well. Keisha Brewster, I'm the Vice Chair of the LEDIC group, and I'm a member of a resident of West Lynn. I am an African American woman who has some great views here. Thank you.
Thank you. Bonnie?
Hello, I'm Bonnie Lander. I'm on the LEDIC group. I am an operation and policy analyst at the Oregon Employment Department. And welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike? Mike Foley?
You may be
Mike is having some mic issues.
Right.
Okay, Fernando.
Hi, my name is Fernando Sobrevilla. Sorry, I'm a couple minutes late. I work for the Clackamas County Children's Commission, and I am a member of the LEDIC Council.
Thank you. Mike, you have your mic. All right, well with that, you want to get started? I could start with a question if you like. You're going, what does everyone personally think is the most important thing for the commission to know about racism in Clackamas County? And oh, by the way, if you touch the bottom of your screen, you can raise, well, I don't see raise my hand on this.
On the participant list.
Oh yeah, you bring up the participant list and there is a, well, if I could. There's a place where you can raise your hand. There it is. It's on the bottom of that, I believe. All right, so I see Stacy has her hand up.
She is an attendee, Chair, and we're not taking comments from attendees.
So anyone.
Can I start, Commissioner Bernard?
Please.
Okay, I want to read our collective statement from LEDIC. Bear with me so I can pull this up. Okay. So this is the statement in support of Black Lives Matter and dismantling white supremacy in Clackamas County. I do want to thank the LEDIC Council for our collaborative efforts in gathering this information together and to put together a thought-provoking, profound statement that hopefully will enact change, not only in our county, but the state and beyond. So the Leaders for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Council LEDIC strives to examine county processes in order to recommend and facilitate changes that foster equitable services and greater inclusiveness, develop leadership from diverse communities, and increase community participation in county government. One of our missions is to foster equity of services and greater inclusiveness. As such, it is paramount that our council make a strong public statement regarding current events in our county, state, and country. While LEDIC seeks to improve the quality of life for several marginalized populations, we must recognize that Black people have, for centuries, been the victims of institutional racism that has gone unaddressed. This cannot remain the case until Black Lives Matter. All lives do not matter. The tragic deaths of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and too many others serve as a reminder that institutional racism towards our Black communities and other communities of color still runs deep in our cities, towns, and neighborhoods. Those who continue to benefit from these structures and systems must listen, read, and relearn the history of our county, state, and country. Clackamas County leaders need to lead in understanding their privilege and scrutinizing how white people's prosperity has come at the expense of communities of color. Silence translates to complicity. The white community must help shoulder the burden in the fight for racial justice and support the Black community. The brutality we have witnessed across the country is something that is forever etched in our minds. We have seen the mistreatment and heartache of our own Black community, members in Michael Fesser and countless others. It is palpable and oftentimes inescapable. It has called several thousands of people into action. We see it on our streets. We hear it in the screams from our communities of color who do not feel safe to speak up and speak out regarding the many years of social injustice and structural oppression. LEDIC recognizes the anger, pain, fear, and trauma that has impacted our Black communities and other people of color. We see our fellow brothers and sisters fight for justice within our county and nation. LEDIC feels the pain of the uphill fight for racial equity. We will continue to work with the Board of County Commissioners, county leaders, and other groups to dismantle the policies, structures, and practices that continue to reinforce a white supremacist culture and negatively impact communities of color. We implore all members of our community to look within their own towns and cities to ensure they are working to eliminate any systematic biases in their systems. This work is hard and it will take time. Until we listen to others, understand what changes are needed and why, and then take action, we will never move forward. LEDIC's collaborative efforts with the Board of County Commissioners, the Coalition of Communities of Color, EDI constituents, and more importantly, Clackamas County, to truly examine best practices, policies, and procedures through an equity lens will hopefully bring much needed long overdue change. All too often resources are cut for programs developed to assist and lift up communities of color. Those lost resources are often redirected to bring other programming that brings down our communities in a disproportionate way. We must remain steadfast and willing to question the status quo. LEDIC is prepared for the challenges that lie ahead. We will continue to be a resource for Clackamas County in the fight for racial justice and equity. What we do now makes a difference. Now, Clackamas County must stand together and decide what kind of difference we want to make. The leaders of Equity, Diversity, Inclusion Council, we are Kimberly Abels, Ernest Torrey Blackwell, Keisha Brewster, Betty Brixton, Rod Cook, Emily Cooper, Mike Foley, Trish Jordan, Bonnie Lander, Maria Magallon, Fernando Sobrevilla, and Joselito Tenega. Thank you.
Thank you. So I got to ask a question. How can we look through an equity lens when we don't know what reality is? I mean, we talk about this all the time. We do projects, but let's look at them through an equity lens. We need folks to tell us. I mean, I'm a white guy with no experience with racial diversity at all. I went to a Catholic school. We had one Black kid, and he was a couple grades older than me. I never met him. How do we measure what we do through an equity lens? We need your help to tell us what that is.
If I may, sorry, I didn't know how to raise my hand on Zoom. And this is Fernando. And obviously, I don't believe there's an easy answer or an easy solution, but we know and we have the tools and the ability to at least get it started. As you say, you know, it's difficult, I can assume, to create a lens when you haven't had those experiences. But that's why it's important to bring stakeholders, people that have actually had those experiences to the table, to be able to share with us their experiences, to be able to communicate and problem solve some of the issues that we currently have in the county. I understand that right now the county is in the middle of the creation of an equity, diversity, and inclusion department. And I think that is a fantastic first step. something that it needed to happen. And the very first thing that we need to do is collectively bring the people with diverse backgrounds, with multi-ethnic people to the table, so they can share their experiences. So we can, like I mentioned before, talk about what the problems that we're encountering in the county, and they could be the ones, and we have to ask them. We can't just simply bring them to the table, but they can potentially provide us with a little bit more of a clear path. I will say that is the very beginning in order for us to be able to create an equity lens for the county, an equity lens for all different departments that are within the county. Thank you.
Thank you. People raising their hand.
There are no hands raised on the participant list.
I have a question for the members of LEDIC, and that is, well, one question was, do you feel safe speaking now, and what can we do to ensure that your input is, you feel safe giving us your input? I mean, is there a structure that you feel would provide that safety? And I don't know what that concern may be exactly, and even explaining what those, if someone feels unsafe, what that might be and look like, so we can understand it. And I just kind of like to know, because in order for us to communicate, you need to feel safe. And I think otherwise, we don't fully understand how you feel safe, it's be hard to have that engagement. So I'd just like to hear your input on that.
We have Trish Jordan, their hand raised.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I feel safe speaking. I think that our biggest challenge is to educate people on what equity is really, the definition of equity, because I find a lot of people get equity and equality, they use it interchangeably, and it's not to be interchangeably. Values and beliefs are formed at a very early age, and in doing former trainings on diversity for early education, what I found is that a lot of the prejudice and a lot of the beliefs have come out of the home. I did a diversity fair for my son's grade school when he was being picked on because he wore his hair in braids. He wore his hair traditionally. And we had several different stations that the kids went to. And then I got all kinds of questions like, do you live in a teepee? No, I live down the street in a house. Do Indians still scalp people? And I ask, where did you hear that? My grandpa. So these things are passed on generationally. And the only way to really change somebody's values or beliefs is to have some deep, meaningful conversations with them, some, one-on-one relationship building that takes a long time. But I would like to see us do we're in COVID and that makes it hard, but I would just really like to see us do more cultural education. And in reading the EDI plans for the county, it was pretty apparent that a lot of folks didn't know what they were doing in trying to even write that plan. So I really believe that the council's here to help with that. If we could maybe look at doing some training, we'd be happy to help with that.
Would be great. Anybody else have their hand up? Oh.
Fernando.
Emily.
Well, I do have something to say. I think this problem, we know the province and we know the pain of the province, and this is already a very long time. So, we just don't lose the hope. And then, gradually we create some plan and then keep working on and keep improve it. And then hopefully, everything will get better and better. My point is, this issue, is just not right now happen. It's already happened for a very long time, and it's going to be this way for a while. But we just don't lose the hope. Don't lose the hope, and we can continue to work on it. Maybe educate our kids and having a plan, keep writing it, and keep working on it, and maybe in the future will become better and better. That's the way I'm thinking right now, because this is not just right now we say, oh, don't have a racial discrimination and then we'll stop it. I don't think this will happen right away.
Well, the problem is, I think that we've been hoping for a long time and it hasn't happened. So it's probably time to take action. I guess what we would like to know is what action can we take to make this happen? And Mike?
Yes.
Please.
Yeah, they said that I finally got unmuted. So I'm Mike Foley. I am on LEDIC and have been on it for a while. I'm the token 76-year-old blind guy, and I'm white. So I'm spending a lot of time sharing some of my long experiences in dealing with this, from being one of the first white teachers to integrate a high school during integration in the 70s. Eldridge Cleaver, the poster I had on my wall for like 20 years, it said, if you're not part of the solution, you are a part of the problem. And all those things still exist. And to answer Jim's question about, are we leery about speaking out? I've been a volunteer at the county in one form or another for over 12 years. And I've been told by many department chair people who chaired the different committees I've been on, we can't say anything political because my job's in jeopardy if the board hears I'm discussing political issues that are delicate and touchy. So I'm not afraid. What can you do to me? I'm an old blind volunteer. You can tell me never to come back, but that's about all that can happen to me. My experience with Jim, who I've known since I was on the disability rights program, where he volunteered to work with us and bring issues to the board that we were interested in. And I've got to know, most of you fairly well through the years. I don't see that, but it certainly is prevalent among some of the staff people in the county. So, there's a start. You guys have got to make your managers and your employees feel more comfortable in coming forward without some sort of punishment if they do. And we at LEDIC would be more than happy to help take that to different departments, is our role in Leaders of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Commissioner Humberston?
Just had one question. The two speakers back indicated that our EDIC program was inadequate in terms of what was written down. I was just wondering if they would help us rewrite it. If what we're trying to do is not being done well enough, I'm all ears to hear how we can do it better and get it in writing so that we have something that we really can get our hands around and pragmatically get something done.
This is Kimberly. To the EDI plans, I think we reviewed all the department EDI plans, and that's where we could tell that there's a huge difference from department to department on how folks understand equity, how they understand how it applies to their work and how it can be implemented. So I think going back to both what Trish and Fernando have already said about getting some quality training so folks understand equity versus equality, how to implement it in their work is going to be critical. And I do think that may be hung up as you're waiting for the 2 new hires to come on. But I think that's a clear action that can be taken and should be taken to help folks understand how to do this work and what it means to do this work. I also think people will feel safer coming forward and engaging when they see leaders who look like them. And I think that's been one of the things that's been more successful, like say in Washington County, where they have like a leaders in training program that's culturally specific, that brings folks in, that demystifies the system, that gets them used to being in spaces that they may not have normally felt comfortable being in, so that when the time comes that maybe they do want to run for an office or they do want to become a leader of their county, and the rest of their community can see themselves on the county and on the board of commissioners one day. I think that would be a huge step forward, is to showing that you want to lead intentionally, that's culturally specific, to bring more voices to the table, because I don't know that we've really seen that yet from Clackamas County. And I really want to call out that I get that it's difficult and it may be hard for white folks to understand. I am a white person. I struggle with this every single day, but I also we can't rely on our communities of color to teach us what an equity lens is and to bring their experience so that helps us learn. That's not how we do this in a trauma-informed way. And if that's how we approach it, we're just going to keep causing more harm. So I really want to be careful about how we approach this and about how we bring equity to the table and who we invite into these spaces, and to make sure that everyone is at a level that it's not going to be harmful for communities of color to come in, and that we figure out those, again, it goes back to those trainings and those relationships and those people who have put themselves out that they want to help you on this journey, as opposed to asking community members to come in and help you with that journey.
We have Fernando and then Commissioner Savas.
Thank you. I would certainly agree with what Kimberly just said, and the rest of the members of the LEDIC. I do believe everything starts with education. Everything. The education that we get at home, the education we get at school, the education that we will also get from institutions like the county, right? I think I'm not here today to criticize the efforts that the EDIC committee had done internally for the county. I think the EDIC has been going on for a few years now, and it was a very good first step. But I do believe that at this point now, it has lost a little bit of the momentum. It has become a little bit more of a just checking the box, right? And again, I'm not talking right now on behalf of the LEDIC team council. I'm talking from my personal perspective. So it was a really good start. I think it's time now to step it up a notch, and I think that's what's happening with the creation of the EDI department. Once again, with the EDIC, for example, and again, I don't work for the county, but for EDIC, did the lunch and learns where we were. The county chose topics of equity and diversity and inclusion for the employees, but it was on the volunteer basis. Well, I think it's time to take that approach a little bit more. I wouldn't say serious, because the work that they've been doing is serious, but I'm missing the word here. Just be more direct, I guess. And it's more than just encouraging our county employees to like, hey, maybe you should go and check this out, and be a little bit more assertive. And it's like, hey, you need to attend these trainings. They are important, especially now. I mean, if we think about what's going on, that a lot of our cities are on literally on fire right now because of the protests and everything that is, all the inequities that have been happening. Just think about what's happening right now with COVID-19 and what's going to happen in the next 2 to 3 weeks. We have to take in consideration the data does not lie. The people that have been the most affected due to COVID-19 have been the Latino population and have been the African-American Black population. Those are the main two. And I know for a fact, for example, in the county right now, we have, the county has employees that fall under those groups. What are we doing to support our county employees? If we cannot support them, how can we expect that they're going to be supporting our community? So again, to me, everything is going to boil down to education, to support for to be more inclusive. And once again, I'm not here to criticize the work that we're doing. As a matter of fact, I would like to applaud what Mr. Smith is doing, because he's giving us momentum. He brought the LEDIC, he brought the EDIC together, and he's giving us a momentum, but we have to take advantage of this, and we have to keep moving forward.
Commissioner Savas?
Thank you, Fernando, for that. My colleagues and I on Friday were speaking for a couple hours with the African American community in a Zoom meeting, and I made the statement that this is really a complex problem, and I am, and still am, concerned that I think some people want to grab one or two things to punch the card and say, job done, it's all better, and it's not going to be, right? This is systemic. This is something that is not just in our country, it's in every country, it's in every state, it's everywhere. And it takes time, and I agree 100%, it's education. It starts with our youth and starts everywhere, and educating ourselves as adults so we can educate all those around us. So thank you for that. I did want to ask if Mike still has his mic available. You think we can hear him? Mike, you mentioned about the political, or not fear, but concerns that maybe you were not heard, or senior staff member were concerned about being political. Was that political as far as racial injustice, or political as far as partisan type political? Could you better define that?
Yeah, I think that and it's been in more than one case, that what they're saying is that if we're, as whatever group I belonged to at the time, are politically challenging on any aspect, that they were worried that the board would get back to the board, and the board would, in some way or another, look at them in a negative way. So we're very careful about ever saying anything, not just on the racial issue, but on any political issue. And I think that's, a really repressive way to run a county. And I don't believe that it's you guys. I know most of you well enough to say, really? They would do that? But several of your managers are very concerned about offending anyone on the board.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm not at all sure what has prompted that through the years. I can understand it at different times when there were different people on the Board of County Commissioners, and I know with Mr. Bernard leaving in a few months and being replaced by someone who I'm not sure at all from her past experiences will be at all attuned to dealing with LEDIC or any of these issues, that gives me a greater concern.
I don't see any other hands raised.
My mic was off. When I first got here, I was told by a number of people that people weren't allowed to talk to us. And so I used to have secret meetings at restaurants with people out of Oregon City to talk about you know, what was going on in their department. And since then, you know, I've always wondered why people didn't come and talk to us directly. Our doors are always open. I know every one of us are open to any discussion. And Gary today said, you know, there's a racism in Clackamas County in our organization. No one has ever come to us and said that. I've never heard that, and it's sad. I've been saying for 11 or 12 years, our doors are open. Come and talk. But it's not you guys. I'm hearing that it could be managers, it could be the silos we create, and the politicians aren't accessible. I mean, that's not true. But you know, I had to have secret meetings.
Mr. Blackwell?
Unmute myself. So I had a student once ask me, why, like, how am I not crazy at the end of the day? Like, all the little like microaggressions and things that happen throughout the course of the day, like, why am I not just like constantly asking questions, complaining about things, all that kind of stuff? And I explained to him that at a certain point, you just don't have the energy, and you reach a point where you expect that that's going to happen. So when it happens, it doesn't surprise you. When you said things about it in the past, nothing ever happened. So what's the point of reaching out to somebody and saying, hey, this happened to me? Because when you did it in the past, nothing happened. So it's hard to say, you know, to expect people to just come knocking down your door when they're experiencing institutional racism, because the history is it's institutional because nobody ever did anything about it in the past. So, I mean, I think that's something that you want to keep in mind. And I also wrote something just kind of short because I didn't want to seem like a complete crazy person. And I think it probably gets to a couple of the things that you were, or that have come up in this conversation. So I will just read directly off of my sheet of paper. So I've been asked a few times about how we got to where we are and why these violent protests are occurring, why there's so many people that are upset, and why would people risk contracting a deadly disease to go out and wave signs and property damage, or why property damage and businesses are being damaged when we are in an economic crisis. In many cases, the people asking these questions are white, so I try to give them my perspective on how I see things. First, I remind them that simply asking me is not a stand-in for a response from the African-American community. We are not a monolith, and our views vary from person to person, just like for white people. Then I explain that although I do not like to see the looting and damage, I very much understand where it comes from. So I rent out a home, and when we met with our property manager, the first thing they said was to expect our home would not be maintained at the same level as we were accustomed to, since renters do not have the same connection to your home as you do. They don't own the home, they're just living there. This is what you are seeing in these protests. If you don't own anything of value or importance, why would you care if it is damaged or destroyed? And if the people that do own those things are the same people that are preventing you from being able to own anything yourself, even better. If a city or a community shows no compassion, care, or interest in your survival, why show the same for them? Institutional practices are a big part of what has kept communities of color disconnected in this fashion, and these practices extend back for hundreds of years. As far as the health concerns, if I told you the numbers from healthypeople.gov that 1 in 87 white men were incarcerated versus 1 in 36 Hispanic men and 1 in 12 Black men, and incarceration correlates with poorer health, and then you saw story after story of Black people being killed, would it make more sense why COVID-19 is not a concern to those protesting? If the virus doesn't kill you, the system will kill you anyway. What I am seeing, though, are more people taking the time to listen, businesses allowing people to speak and be heard, and groups stepping up to support change. Many of those groups are turning words and thoughts into action, and I ask the county to do the same. So that whole idea of taking the time to inform yourself, learn more, invite more training, all those pieces are what you can use to learn about what these problems are and figure out ways to fix them and to not be stagnant, right? these are not problems that you can fix with one sentence, one statement, one action, and they are not problems that you can fix this year and they go away forever. It's a constant work in progress. And when Fernando talked about having that lens, it's that lens that helps you continue to do the work. So the more people and communities that you can reach out to and to keep them connected into this work, I think would go a long way to making things better in the county.
You, Fernando?
Thank you, Tori, for that. I also want to, when you ask the question about, we haven't heard from our communities, we were here to help, but we haven't heard from them. Similar to what Tori's saying, I don't speak for the Latino community in Clackamas County at all, but is it based on my personal experience, as being a person of color and also working with Latino communities here in Clackamas County, is that like right now we're living in Latinos in our state are living in a state of fear. You want to know what are the reasons why so many Latinos are dying due to COVID? It's because a lot of them are afraid to go to the doctor, because they're afraid that they're going to get deported, because there is that fear that there is simply no protections for this community. So, again, and I know that this room is full of great intentions, but when you have, like Tori says, like when you have such an ingrained systemic racism, you're simply going to alienate certain groups of people, and they're never going to feel comfortable coming to an authority figure that might be able to make changes. But with the fear that exists of the separation from their children, and to say, follow what Kimberly said earlier, it's a matter of we talk with the people that we feel comfortable with. And if we want to make changes with the county, we need to be more inclusive, and that means we need to bring more diversity to the workforce in the county. It has to happen, and that's the way that we're going to be able to open more dialogue. And again, is education, is communicating to all the partner agencies that are currently working in our county and providing services for the families in need, to let them know that this is a safe place, that it's okay to have your children apply for OHP, right? So they can get services. So that's, if we're looking for reasons why some of the communities don't want to talk to us, is because we, as a community, unfortunately, we have created this fear to begin.
Keisha?
Hi. So I would, and thank you, Fernando, and everyone for your feedback. I would also say, when you're making policies and procedures, think of an example called Ban the Box, House Bill 3025. And the idea was that it actually passed in 2015. And Oregon is one of the 13, at the time, 13 states that approved this law. And what it does, as you hopefully all know, is that it makes it illegal for employers to ask at the application process if an employee or potential applicant is or has been in an institution where he has a criminal history. So what the data has now shown us since 2015, and since this was put on the record, which, the box was there, now we changed this ban and made this against the law. What the data is now showing us is actually it is hurting African Americans and people of color largely more disproportionate now than it did before. And why that's happening is because employers, instead of asking at the interview process, can we talk about your criminal background? What they're deciding to do is just not have that conversation. They're not choosing anyone who's within a certain age group where they would think they're convicting crimes. So therefore, these African Americans, people of color, are not even allowed to move to the next step of the interview process because of the ban the box 1325, which was put in place in intent to help people who had criminal background, but instead actually it's hurting these people. And it's hurting everyone else who is of color. So what we need to do is when we start setting these policies and procedures and putting this in place, what we should have done is look at the residual effect of what was going to happen to other people. And we never did. We were just so excited to get that box off the application. And now what people or males of white males are actually now getting the jobs at a higher rate than people of color, whether they have criminal backgrounds or not now, because it's a safer bet. And you don't have to have that uncomfortable conversation. So those are pieces that definitely need to be looked at. Also, not allowing people to be on boards and committees and councils where they know civil rights violations are happening. They know human rights violations are happening and they can't say anything because codes are protecting them. That's exactly what happened in Westland. That is exactly what the council is saying right now. They said, we did know about Michael Fesser. We did know about the issues, but we couldn't say anything. Who is that hurting? And ultimately, and I appreciate everyone. I appreciate everyone who's looking at the Michael Fesser case. And I appreciate everyone who had to pay a dollar, a dime, a cent, time and effort into this. But $600,000 to all the inequities that are in place for all of the people of color who have to deal with the discrimination and racial violations every day of their life. I have had to deal with police brutality on a personal level. I have had my head on the front of my car, my hand handcuffed behind my back because I was vacuuming my car because I looked like a suspect. How many of you have had that? When you build these policies and procedures, think of all of these people you're affecting. We helped you get to where you are. What you have to also do is not just come out to the community in times of crisis. Check in with the communities of color all the time. We live here and we're not going away. Thank you.
Thank you for that. That was really powerful. I'm wondering, frankly, it sounds to me like, I don't know if it's a sounding board or I don't know if it's a board or a committee of color that could actually receive maybe some of these concerns that are going on to help people of color communicate and get those messages to us. Because I will tell you, I can tell that my colleagues, whenever we hear of anything that is racially motivated or any injustice, that we have acted. And we've acted swiftly. But if we're not hearing it, we can't act. So somehow, if anyone has any ideas on how we somehow overcome that barrier, but we need to hear it.
May I ask you guys a question?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure everyone is familiar with last week when the mayor of our largest city in Clackamas County on Facebook gave a a tirade against the Black Lives Matters group, where he said that if police have killed 12 unarmed black people out of 61 million in the country, he thinks that's perfectly acceptable. And this is the mayor of the largest city in Clackamas County. And when his commission called an emergency meeting last Saturday, and he showed up and they started questioning him about his motivation, he stormed out of the meeting. And you know, the question about, is Clackamas County racist? Of course it is. It's very racist. And we just kind of, in my 35 years here, we've kind of pretended like, well, not really. And so I'm asking you guys, why do you think that is? Why are we so quiet when we have important politicians making these statements and it goes just kind of by the wayside? The only response we saw was on Facebook when Representative Mark Meek put his political career on the line by really chastising the mayor for his comments. And, you know, we'll see how that's reflected in his upcoming election. But that's the only thing I've seen from anyone else in the county about this very racist tirade. So tell me, guys.
Yeah. I don't follow Dan Holliday. I didn't know that. Oh, that's too bad. It's not
Yeah,
surprising.
well, it certainly is, yeah.
Huh.
And I think also what the county can do, it's low-bearing fruit. Build a platform where people have a voice, no matter who they are. And be responsible for that. You're going to see things, you're going to hear things, but allow people to at least go to a website. I mean, you could even just do a website. I mean, you're still excluding quite a few people, but you could build a website to say, please voice your opinion. And why I say you're going to be needing to be responsible for it is you're going to hear a lot of injustice. You might even hear people crying for help. And you might need to learn how to respond to that. I don't know if that's the new equity group. I don't know what that's going to be. But there needs to be a platform where people can even say, I don't even know, but you know what? I feel something isn't right now. Whether it's their work, their life, their play, their visits, whatever it is. It's the easiest, lowest bearing fruit there is.
Betty?
Your mic, Betty. No. Your mic's still not on, Betty.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you, Jim. Sorry about that. So I've heard of Jim and Paul, I've heard you say that you don't hear of racism, you don't hear about instances of racism in the county, or your doors are open and you welcome people to come talk to you. And that hasn't been happening. Here in West Lynn, you had one of the clearest examples of institutional racism anywhere. I mean, it was all laid out. Mr. Fessler did, I mean, that incident happened in 2017, and it took until, 3 years for him to get resolution, even though he approached a number of institutions that were supposed to resolve the issues that he encountered. It was only when he got an attorney that he was able to get resolution, and that we learned about it. And this is something that happened right in our county. I want to know from the commissioners, what did you learn from that about racism in Clackamas County, or what is your, how can you use your power or your your position to affect that? How did that impact you?
Thank you for the question. I'm going to be brief in my response, and I want to qualify what I said, and that is that what I meant was when the Board of County Commissioners took action, I was speaking specifically about internal stuff that we have control over, right? But we do know, for example, that if there's a labor issue, you know, if this happens at Clackamas County or happens in West Lynn, that is a lot of those details are within the city council. We don't know what happens in their city council with what happened, a disciplinary action or an oversight. So we don't know the whole story. We know just as much as you do and what we read in the papers. So it's hard for us to really judge or act when we don't know the details, and we just wait for that to bubble up. But here, we're going to take responsibility for the internal piece because we know what happens here. So that's just one clarification. But if one of my colleagues wants to respond to Betty's question, I think maybe we spent a lot of I thought we spent a lot of the dialogue on the internal aspects, and I think maybe talking about the external aspects is important as well. But that is a different conversation on the external side.
We have Tori and then Commissioner Schrader.
So I can't remember if it was Paul or Jim that asked about how to report, you know, issues or concerns. And that was a question I had maybe 2 years ago, and I couldn't find a way to report. Like if I felt like someone said something to me that was like racially offensive, is there a way for me to report that to the police other than like calling 911? There isn't a way to do that. So it would be great if the county had some system that you could do that. You could collect that information. There would be, you know, statistics and data behind that, so that it helps inform policing and other, you know, components of how the county and how the cities do their work. I know I read a story in probably about 2 years ago about Eugene doing some of that work and recalibrating how they record their interactions with people, and they saw huge numbers and increases in the amount of bias crimes reported in Eugene versus other cities. So I would definitely encourage you guys to look at trying to develop some kind of countywide platform that we could use as, you know, residents and citizens to be able to report our feelings and get that information to the right people. And with that piece being said, as far as like, you know, it doesn't feel like there's any racism in the county or whatever. Like, do people know what the nickname for Lake Oswego is?
No, what is it?
It's Lake No Negro.
Right.
And I heard that as early as 12 hours ago.
Yeah.
So, like, there's definitely an impression that we have areas of our county, and I have talked to other people, and I do it myself. I will do a Google search. If I'm going someplace in Oregon or in the county that I've never been to before, I will do a Google search on where I'm going to and what types of things have happened there before I get in the car and start driving. And I'd check to make sure I have a full tank of gas so I don't have to stop between there and when I come home, right? Like, that's an impression, and being able to address some of that public-facing thing, you know, some of that public-facing problem is something that I would love the county to do.
Well, I remember when there was a black radio station in Lake Oswego and they burned it down. And so I've always thought that way of Lake Oswego. That's why I'd never lived there. Sorry, guys who live there.
Commissioner Schrader and then Fernando.
So I don't think I'm on mute right now.
No, you're not.
Okay. So I live in Lake Oswego now, but I spent 36 years in Canby. And I'm aware of the Lake No Negro piece.
Oh.
Do have a group here, I think Sonia will also tell you that is responding to racism. That is a very active group that is moving forward with what is perceived to be a largely white, wealthy community. I will tell you that I serve on the Lakewood board, and for example, with me, one of their big issues is equity and inclusion. But enough about that, because I haven't lived here as long as I lived in Canby, which was 36 years, on a farm in a small rural community. And we adopted in 1985, my youngest son is Korean American, and I've talked to my colleagues about this. And we adopted him when he was an infant. So he was 4 months old. And we had to deal directly with him being targeted by racist comments and racist issues. Being called Chinky Boy, coming home crying because somebody had made a comment about his race, which pretty much infuriated the rest of my children. And I had to teach them to try and not be violent, because I think that they were ready to go out and just make an issue of this. And he learned to take it. He was consistently racially profiled by the Canby police, usually in the Fred Meyer parking lot. And I would worry as a mother, as a white mother with a Korean American son, that he would not be safe. So I can't say that I've experienced it directly as much as the African American community, but it became clear to me that because he looked different, and that he was racially different, there weren't many Asian Americans in Canada. There were a number of Hope families that kind of came along in the end, but it was very difficult to see that happen and see him cry and see him feel ostracized. It has a great ending in that he was a very popular kid. He was an athlete. I think being an athlete helped him tremendously, and he was widely accepted in the school community, but we had to experience that. And that was one of the reasons when we embarked on this, that I wanted to make sure that this spark from our African American community that Black Lives Matters is bigger now. It's bigger. It's institutional racism exists in this county. I've experienced it firsthand, and we just kept him safe as best we could and pushed back. So anyway, I can tell you some of my other stories, not today, when I grew up in Port Chester, New York, which was went to a high school with African American, Hispanic, Jewish, Italian, you name it. We were the melting pot. And it certainly helped me understand what people were going through, because with the kids I grew up with, we didn't see the color or the race. We just did what we did together. So anyway, when you talk about racism, I can't imagine, I can't imagine what it's like for our African American community, but I've gotten a taste of what it can be like for some families. So anyway.
So Rod, you've been at the county how long?
About, I think, 23 years, somewhere in there.
Tell us about your experience at the county, if you don't mind.
Well, there's multiple stories, but I will say, when I was very new to the county, I was immediately approached with a white male telling me, reminding me that he was a white male Anglo-Saxon. And that was probably my first week of work here in the county. And I asked that person why he was telling me that and what I should do with the information. And so I was, at least, I think, privileged even at that point, where that wasn't going to deter me from making a career of in Clackamas County, because it's where I lived and it's where I wanted to work. But it is, the experience, and I think most African Americans, especially had they been from the Portland area, it would have affirmed everything they had heard about or thought about Clackamas County, and they would have walked in that first week. And then when we talked about privilege, see, I've been a manager the whole time, and I think I'm somewhat privileged as being a manager. And I think I probably had one of those secret conversations with you, Commissioner Bernard. And I remember, Martha Schrader, when your son was going through that, I was actually doing gang task force, and we were looking at profiling the kids. So a lot of you, I've experienced what we've been talking about here in terms of the institutions, how they can be set up in a hierarchy as it relates to us being able to talk to county commissioners. And if it wasn't for the county commissioner saying, Rodney, I don't care what you've been told or what the system's told you, you can talk to me. And see, and that was a personal thing you said to me. I think we were at a fundraising event when you said it to me. And so that made me feel like I could always go to you. And so I always have. Commissioner Schrader, there's several, Sonia Fisher, there's just multiple commissioners who have personally said something to me that made me feel like it's safe to go have the real conversation. But it is true that, you know, politics being what they are, hierarchies being what they are, we're all told to not go directly to the county commissioners. So that may be something we need to separate out, like what type of issues can you go have a conversation and which ones you leave to your superiors to go have those conversations. So it's just, you know, and that's probably the same wherever you work. But so, you know, and I've had multiple cases where we've been over funding streams, and I've had opportunity to talk to the readers of applications for funding where they were basically opposed to giving monies to minority organizations. And had I not been there to hear the conversation or to get them to look at that issue differently, those nonprofits wouldn't have got funded in Clackamas County. So, like I said, I think I've been blessed. I've had opportunities to make a difference, and so I've always felt like Clackamas has the potential to do the right thing. There are certain of you who have always done that, and we just need more of it. So I think, and that's why I've worked with this committee that's before you today. They are, as you see, they're very diverse. They have different opinions. They have different life stories, and they bring it to the table. And I think this current administration has truly asked for their voice to be heard and has made that real in a short order. So I'm hopeful. I'm very hopeful of where we're going. It's real. The racism has been there, but I've also had allies along the way, and it's those allies, those relationships that we have to continue to build that allow for the creative and the honest conversation for us to move this agenda forward.
We have, let's see, Fernando and then Commissioner Humberston.
And I just wanted to follow up with what Tori and Keisha were talking about, kind of to answer the question of what can the commissioners, what can we do? And, I completely understand that, there's the commissioners from Clackamas County cannot interfere with whatever the commissioners are doing in the other cities. So let's focus on what we can do here in Clackamas County, right? Let's try to find the solutions. And I think what Keisha was saying, the creation of a platform, and what Tori was saying, to be able to give the public a voice, to be heard and feel heard, I think is extremely important to give that concept, that knowledge to our community. It is on the Clackamas County page in the self-assessment that trust is our currency, and the public has to trust us. So maybe the creation, or like with the creation of the EDI, we could probably potentially add another layer, for example, where, and again, this is something that just came to my mind. Obviously, I haven't looked at the logistics of this, but within that department, it could be the creation also of an additional, I don't know if it will be a department or a section or a task force that can receive complaints and notifications specifically related to inequities and race, and something where the public can feel heard, and we can actually take action, and we can filter that and send it to the proper departments. So if it is, again, I'm spitballing here, but if it's something to do with the transportation or the sheriff department or emergency preparedness, either one of those, if there is a complaint, if there is a concern, the EDI department can take a look at it and bring them feedback to the proper channels. And if it's something that is so offensive or so bad that it has to go to a higher leadership, then the EDI department will be able to identify that and take it to Mr. Schmidt, and then potentially even make it to the commissioners. So you were asking, what can we do? And this is something that it just came to my mind.
Thank you. Commissioner Humberston?
We really, really need to do this work. There's no question about it. But I'm also a realist that understands where we live. 89% of the people in Clackamas County are white. About 2% are African American, and the rest other ethnicities for the other remaining 8 or 9%. Most people living in Clackamas County don't see what you see. And I'm speaking to Rod in particular on this, because they live in a bubble. There's no question about that. And that's going to make this work hard to do. It's going to make it difficult to get people to understand that the bubble that they live in isn't a real world. It only seems like it. And I want to be realistic about what we're going to be trying to do. This is going to be hard work. There are going to be people whose feelings get hurt, who will not believe that they're prejudiced or that they're racist, and that don't understand how their behaviors affect others. And we are going to have to take some hits as commissioners to deal with this. But those are hits that we need to take. This is work that needs to be done. And all I can tell you is I believe that all of my colleagues are on board with this and understand it, and are committed to doing the work to the best of our ability.
I had to tell you a little story about my father. My father wrote Jackie Robinson, and Jackie wrote back. He's the first black baseball player. And I was pretty proud of my dad for that. And he had a number of black friends. But when a black kid walked down the street, he would stand by the cash register. And we hired a black kid, the only black kid who ever worked in our business, sent him out to get a car, and somebody called the police on him, from the street right in front of us. And the Ku Klux Klan leader used to be the Memorial Chapel owner. Peaks Memorial was the Ku Klux Klan leader in Milwaukee. And my dad was great. He really was, but he deep down, there was something in him that made him fearful, just because he didn't know this person. Or actually, I think it's because he was black. Otherwise, he wouldn't do that. But it's tough. It's tough to be blind to your own prejudice, I guess. It's difficult, but I think the idea of a phone line or some way to report what's happening in Clackamas County, or where we can do something at the county, is a great idea. That way, at least we know what's going on, even if we can't do anything about it, at least we know it. And I know Gary's been getting some emails lately. I think, Gary, you want to say anything? You're just listening. I know we're supposed to just listen.
Here to listen. I'm getting some emails. I've been sending messages to staff about the racial injustices in our world, our community, our county, and even in our organization. And I have to say, I'm very disappointed in some of the responses I'm getting from our staff. Of course, I'm grateful they have the courage to email me as the administrator, but I'm very sad by some of the responses I'm getting. So I will leave it at that.
We have Tori, and then Kimberly, and finally Commissioner Fisher.
So, just in response to what Kim said earlier, I would say two things in response to that person that says, why do we need to do this work? It's 89% white. What about the other 11%? Well, one, as a leader, you took an oath to help everybody in the county, and everybody's everybody. Even if it's that little 11%, everybody is still everybody. So you can't do your job. I'm not saying you're not doing your job, can't say, like, go. But that person that says you're not doing your job by helping that 11%, you're doing what you said you wanted to do for our county by helping everybody. And the other thing is that by having the conversations and being thoughtful about how you're going to address the work, it doesn't just help one group. It helps all the groups, right? That becomes a system for reporting that everybody gets to use. And it might develop into other people. We have LGBTQ communities. We have low income communities. All those communities now have a way to filter that information up to you guys, right? So it's not as simple as the Black Hotline. It's going to be helpful for the entire county.
Kimberly?
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to say related to the percentages of folks and how they identify, we know that we have a lot of hidden communities in how big our county is. And one of the best ways that we can help change those numbers are to put more effort behind the census and to get people to participate and know that it will not harm them. There will not be any retaliation to them, to have, and it's connecting with those CBOs or their, faith-based organizations or something that is a trusted ally in those communities that can be that voice for you and can carry that message. And we need to build those strings out into the community so that we can get accurate numbers, because we know there are more people of color in our county than is representative in that census data right now.
Commissioner Fisher?
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate this conversation. And along with what Fernando was saying, I would really love to see us broaden this format to include people in the community and just have listening sessions and just continue these conversations, because they are so enlightening. And this is really the impetus of where change can really solidify. I did want to respond to Betty's question and also to Mike Foley in the beginning. Betty had asked about what does it impress upon us when we see such blatant racism in West Lynn with the Fesser case. And I can't remember who responded. I think it was Commissioner Savas who responded that, we don't see what happens in those other jurisdictions, which is absolutely true. We're not at the table, but what it really impresses upon us is we are at our own table and we see systematic lack of accountability throughout really our public institutions. It's like, how do we build in accountability? And that's from the elected officials all the way through the bureaucracy. And I am so happy for this movement and the recommendations that are coming, and our People of Color Caucus at the legislature that are offering legislative fixes to create accountability, because we really need to change our systems. So one thing that I would really, really like from this group, I'm really hungry for this and I want it so bad. And Gary, thank you so much for everything that you've done to counsel me in these during this time, because we need advisors that we can say, hey, look, this is a list of strategies that are coming out of a group of leaders, whether it's in Washington County or Multnomah County or wherever. What do we think about this? Where's our Clackamas County voice on these recommendations? Should we advocate for this at the local level, at the state level, with our other jurisdictions to help us? If we could get a lens, a policy on what we should be advocating for. I know that all of our commissioners spend a lot of time lobbying our other local jurisdictions, our federal delegation, and our other state legislators. So having your lens would be really, really helpful to us. And then to Mike, I think you mentioned the issue with in Oregon City. And like,
Yes.
what do we do as elected officials? And I mean, I can tell you, before it all blew up in Oregon City, there was a letter that the mayors put together, and I saw that Commissioner Mayor Holliday wasn't on there. And so I texted him at 8 p.m. on a Saturday night and said, hey, what's up with this? What's going on? And then we ended up in a pretty deep conversation later on about these issues. I can't say that I fixed the issue, but I definitely didn't shove it under the rug. And then I can just tell you that then there's Chair Bernard that I'm then saying, hey, what do you think about this? Is there anything we can do? I mean, we are really, as electeds, I can tell you that in the circle that I walk in, that we're trying to hold each other accountable, but we need your help too. When you see stuff, please hold us accountable. We long for that, really.
Thank you.
I have no problem doing that.
I know, you are awesome. My advisor, Mike.
We have Bonnie, your hand raised.
Hello. I just wanted to say that the opportunity to work with the Coalition of Communities of Color, and I know Mr. Schmidt was at that meeting with us. It was very interesting to hear the way that they want to go out and reach out and find they're not just looking around and saying, well, what have we got here? They're going out and surveying the community, getting to know the people. The more effort we could put behind that and actually make it something even bigger than what was envisioned for, could potentially be a springboard for developing those relationships that Kimberly was talking about, and encouraging people to participate. So it was a really exciting discussion that we had with them, and that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you. Yes.
Can I say something? I just want to say thank you for all the words of wisdom, the insight, and coupled with that, there's also pain and suffering that's going on in this world. Hearing everyone talking is, especially with the commissioners, and I know that your job is difficult to do. You're juggling multiple counties, different populations, underserved populations, but to be reactionary right now, it's probably not a good thing right now. We wanna help you build that momentum. You have the tools available. It's always been there. Now you have the Coalition of Communities of Color on board. You have the EDI. You have us. We are the voice of the people. We can help you through those difficult moments, those difficult times. As Commissioner Humberson pointed out earlier, it's going to be tough. Of course it's going to be tough. It's going to be a lot of pain, a lot of hurt, a lot of people are going to be upset, a lot of people are going to be happy. We got to find somewhere that we all collectively can make a difference, because the reward in the end, we don't know what that is, but I'm hopeful. I'm really hopeful. To Rod's point, to Emily, to Keisha, I'm really hopeful that, especially now that with Gary and the EDI office that we're going to have, this potential is going to skyrocket. But it's not going to be easy work. I'm with you, Commissioner Humberson. It's not going to be easy, but you're not alone. You have us. Clearly, you have us. You have a lot of bright minds here. You have a lot of bright minds, the people of color that, I'm part of that 1-2% out there, but we all count. To Tori's point, we all count. So I just hope that, at times of despair, or you feel like, oh my gosh, like, what have I gotten myself into? There's got to be a voice in the back of your mind saying, I got support.
We lost you.
Maybe we can go on to Commissioner
I have
Savas.
Leadick. I have Rod. I mean, we are on the cusp of making dramatic changes. And you are not alone. Remember that. You're not alone. We're part of your voice too. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Savas?
Yeah, I want to thank each and every one of you. I think your leadership, the fact that you're here, the fact that you're talking to us and you're sharing this is great. I would, frankly, personally, I'd like to carry the conversation on to another setting like this, but I'd like to be able to come back with maybe a suggestion, or you all or we all come back with some suggestions of at least how we, whether it's the platform that Fernando talked about or a sounding board or a conduit, how we actually receive and listen to each other. We need to establish that. And I know that primarily that our biggest concern, our biggest opportunity to fix things is internal, but you know, I know we haven't spent a lot of time on that. We did a little bit on the external piece, and thank you, Mike, for that, for sharing the mayor of Oregon City's situation. But I do want to at least get some footing and to make sure that we get that level of communication and that trust and the confidence and no fear, and that one feels safe in communicating that. I will say that one thing that has been almost a barrier for me, but I've been respectful of the system. When I say the system, I'm not talking about what color the system is or how we respond to that, but and there's just the structure of the organization. I don't really want to talk to an employee about something personal when I know that his superior, there's a chain of command, right? And we have to respect that. I have to respect that chain of command. I've been taught and raised that way, to respect that chain of command. And I think that's something that might be a barrier that we need to figure out how we do, because it's not, I don't think that chain of command is necessarily, hopefully, is not built with any kind of racial prejudice. It's just simply the system that we have. But if it's a barrier, we need to figure out how we break down those barriers so that we have that opportunity to speak. And maybe there's a platform or a forum where we're really not talking about, let's say, a complaint as much as here's a situation, here's what we can learn from it, here's how we can remedy it. And it's not necessarily a complaint. Because when it becomes a complaint, a personnel complaint, then it gets complicated. Then we have to abide by all of these, and maybe we get someone from HR to talk about that, but that could be a barrier simply because of a complaint. So I just want to put that out there. And Gary, I think you know what I'm trying to say there. And I don't want that to be somehow, again, a barrier or a blockade in us doing good work and communicating.
There are no other hands raised. Chair Bernard?
Well, I guess I'd just like to thank you. You know, we were all of us were on that phone call on Friday. I think that there's a lot of great ideas. There are a lot of challenges with changing the systemic problem. I mean, some of those might be our inability to communicate or to direct the sheriff department to do certain things. I think there needs to be some legislative change to give citizens more power in decision making at various police departments, sheriff's departments, ways to direct funding that would allow us more flexibility or more control over how dollars are spent. There's a lot that can be done, but we can't do it alone. So very much appreciate you guys joining us, and look forward to doing this again. I've always looked at life as an opportunity to learn and never stop learning. So I'm open to learning all I can. So I think unless there's anything else, we'll schedule another one of these. By the way, we did have a resolution that you might take a look at for consideration on Thursday for a vote. Gary, can you get it to him? I really don't want you to do a lot of wordsmithing or anything, because we struggled for 2 weeks trying to get the words right. But love to just hear a response about the resolution. Probably should have went to you guys first, but we all struggled with this a lot. So thanks again.
Chair, we have Tori has his hand raised.
Yeah, Tori.
You're on mute.
Unmute myself. Since it felt like we were going to kind of wrap up, I had a poem that I wrote that I've been sharing with people. I don't usually do poetry, but I was just getting really frustrated around the events taking place. And so I put this together and I've been sharing it with people. So I will share it in this forum also. I am a father, brother, husband, son, nephew, uncle, cousin, grandson, and I am Black. I am a friend. I help lift boxes, babysit and listen. I bring gifts to parties, attend the weddings, and take all the pictures, and I am Black. I am a teacher, educating students and giving them a path, reaching out and lifting up, providing skills that last, and I am Black. I am a scientist, asking questions to help us understand our world and its connections, solving problems, breaking riddles, constant reflection, and I am Black. I am a veteran. I served and helped maintain our right to liberty, justice, and to protest, and I am Black. I am a community member, joining communities, giving feedback, using my voice to vote, attending meetings, donating time and money, helping to build hope, and I am Black. When I get pulled over or ask for help, when I ask for respect or to respect someone else, when I question being followed for touching something on a store shelf, when I am not safe jogging by myself, bird watching, wearing a hoodie, or just in my home at rest, when I plead to take a breath, I am just Black.
Thank you. Thank you. What is that noise?
It's the fan on my computer. It's mad that we've been talking for so long.
All right. Well, thank you again. Anybody, anything else? All right. Well, next time. Okay. Thank you.
I want to
Thank
thank
you.
Go ahead.
You've been absolutely fantastic. I'm glad you're my friend, and I'm glad you stayed in Clackamas County. Just saying. Good night, everybody. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.